Conor McGregor wasn't born into greatness. He forged it with his bare hands, clawing out of the gray corners of Crumlin, Dublin, where dreams usually withered in the cold. From the beginning, he moved different, spoke louder, thought bigger. People saw a loudmouth, a braggart, a flash in the pan, but inside his chest beat the heart of a wolf. He told the world he would be a millionaire by 25. They laughed. He told his parents he'd be champion of the world. They worried. Yet behind the bravado stood a boy who had tasted poverty, labored in toilets as a plumber, and vowed never to return. The fire began at Crumlin Boxing Club when he was 12, not because he wanted to compete, but because he had to survive. Growing up in a place where reputation was earned through fists, Conor didn't just want to be good at fighting, he had to be the best. When other boys dreamed of football stardom, McGregor stood in mirrors, throwing jabs, shadowboxing with the ghosts of warriors yet to come. Every bruise on his knuckles was a brick in the castle he planned to build. Every punch thrown was a brick wall between him and failure. He walked into Straight Blast Gym with nothing but arrogance, questions, and thunder in his fists. Coach John Kavanagh didn't see a future champion. He saw another Irish lad trying his luck. But Conor never quit. Taken down over and over, he kept coming back. When others folded, he adapted. When he got tapped, he got up. He was a raw talent. No grappling, no wrestling, just hands that moved like hammers and an ego too big for Dublin. But week after week, his mind sharpened, his spirit hardened, and his will became undeniable. He was still broke, still unknown, still nobody, working as a plumbing apprentice, covered in grime, hands freezing on steel pipes while dreaming of octagons. But one morning, standing knee-deep in someone else's waste, he looked around at a life of limits and said no more. That day, he walked off the site, not just quitting a job, but rebelling against fate itself. From that moment, he burned bridges behind him, forcing himself forward. Every unpaid bill, every cold night, every welfare check was just another reason to train harder, and he trained like no one else could. He made his amateur debut in 2007. One round, one knockout, one glimpse of what was coming. Then in 2008, he turned professional. They called him brash, reckless, delusional. But each fight he took, he ended with dynamite. There was no plan B, no fallback, just destruction. He rose fast on the local scene, devastating opponents with precision and fury. In 2012, with only welfare money and his girlfriend working 2 jobs, he became a double champion in Cage Warriors. Not just 1 belt, 2. It wasn't luck, it was destiny. His message was clear. We're not here to take part, we're here to take over. Dana White flew to Dublin expecting a prospect. He found a phenomenon. After one dinner with Conor, the UFC president called his partner and said, "I don't know if this kid can throw a punch, but if he can, he's going to be huge." And he could. On April 6, 2013, Conor McGregor walked into the UFC like he owned it. First fight, Marcus Brimage. Knockout in 67 seconds. A $60,000 bonus that changed his life overnight. From €188 social welfare to global spotlight. But he didn't smile. He didn't pause. He told the cameras the same thing he'd always said. This is only the beginning. Ireland had never had a UFC star. The idea of an Irishman ruling the cage was laughable. Yet here was McGregor, with his velvet suits, his Rolexes, and his vicious left hand, turning skepticism into silence. Every press conference, every weigh-in, he grew louder, sharper, deadlier. He wasn't just winning fights, he was hijacking the narrative. Fans adored him, fighters feared him, and behind every insult, every stare down, was surgical precision. He knew exactly what he was doing. Fame didn't distract him, it fueled him. He trained harder, hit harder, and rose faster than anyone before. Fight after fight, he buried names like Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, fighters who'd go on to become champions in their own right. But in front of Conor, they were just stepping stones. He called shots, predicted rounds, and delivered knockouts with mathematical accuracy. He didn't just back up his talk, he redefined what backing it up meant. Against Dennis Siver, he finished the fight, then leaped the cage and screamed into Jose Aldo's face. The King of Rio had reigned for 10 years, but McGregor wasn't intimidated. He was hunting empires. The Aldo fight was supposed to be the climax, but fate intervened. A rib injury, fight delayed. Chad Mendes stepped in, a wrestler, the one style many said would expose Conor. For the first time, McGregor bled. For the first time, he struggled, but he never broke. Mendes took him down, pounded him, opened his face, but when the second round bell rang, Conor roared back. 10 seconds left, McGregor found the opening. A left hand, a fall, a finish. He became interim featherweight champion, not through dominance, but through willpower that refused to die. And then came the night, the real one. McGregor versus Aldo. 13 seconds, one punch. Years of legacy erased in a heartbeat. Aldo had ruled for a decade. McGregor dethroned him in less time than it takes to blink. It wasn't just a win, it was a global event. Conor stood above the division, holding gold, smiling as millions watched. He had done what he always promised, but he was still hungry. The featherweight belt wasn't enough. He wanted the lightweight crown too. 2 divisions, 1 king, and so began the next chapter of his myth. He was set to face Rafael dos Anjos for the lightweight title, but fate played its hand again. Dos Anjos pulled out. Enter Nate Diaz, a scrappy, unbreakable brawler from Stockton, California. The world barely had time to breathe. Conor moved up 2 weight classes in less than 2 weeks, 145 to 170 pounds. No excuses, no hesitation. "I'll fight anyone," he said. "Any weight, anytime." The fight was brutal. McGregor stormed forward, landing heavy, but Nate weathered the storm and dragged him into deep waters. Conor was exhausted, choked out, submitted. It was his first UFC loss, and he made no excuses. Most men would have run, avoided the rematch, moved back down to protect the brand. But Conor demanded it. Same opponent, same weight. This time, he trained differently, more mature, more strategic. He brought in experts, trained for endurance, sharpened his mind. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving something to himself and to the world. UFC 202 was a war, 5 rounds of hell. Diaz refused to break, but McGregor outlasted him, outsmarted him, edged him. When the decision came, Conor's hand was raised, the king was back, and now nothing stood between him and the double champion dream. Eddie Alvarez was next, the reigning lightweight champion, a gritty, powerful veteran. But to Conor, he was another target, another page in the story. At UFC 205 in Madison Square Garden, the UFC's New York debut, McGregor gave the performance of a lifetime. He toyed with Alvarez, countered everything, dropped him repeatedly. Then came the final combination, a crisp left-right that sealed history. Conor McGregor became the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 titles in 2 weight classes simultaneously. "I just want to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody," he roared. "The double champ does what he wants." He had reached the mountaintop, from welfare checks to millionaire, from plumber to global icon. And then he vanished. With his girlfriend expecting their first child, McGregor stepped away from fighting. But while his gloves collected dust, his mind was racing. He wanted more. More glory, more history, more money. That's when he turned to boxing and challenged the undefeated king, Floyd Mayweather. Many laughed, some screamed gimmick, but Conor made it real. They filled press conferences around the world. Conor in his mink coats and sunglasses, Floyd with his legacy on the line. A circus for some, a dream for McGregor. The fight broke every record. Hype, views, money. It wasn't just a sporting event, it was a cultural earthquake. And when they finally clashed, Conor surprised many. For 10 rounds, he hung with one of the greatest boxers in history. He lost by TKO, yes, but he earned respect. And more importantly, he earned over $100 million. He returned to Dublin not just a legend, but a mogul. He launched Proper 12 whiskey, turned his name into a brand, his persona into a global force. But in his absence from the cage, another force had risen from the shadows, a storm named Khabib. Khabib Nurmagomedov was everything Conor wasn't: quiet, devout, relentless. A wrestler who smothered opponents, undefeated, unstoppable. And there was no love lost. Their feud boiled over beyond sport. When Khabib's camp cornered Conor's friend Artem, the Notorious one reacted with fire. He flew across the ocean, stormed into Brooklyn, and launched a dolly through a bus window. Glass, blood, chaos. The world watched, stunned. Fines followed, legal troubles. But for Conor, it was personal, and it made the eventual fight with Khabib the biggest in UFC history. It wasn't just about belts anymore. It was about vengeance, legacy, dominance. When they finally met in October 2018, the hype was volcanic. Conor came out brash, loud, defiant. But Khabib was a ghost, calm and cold. When the cage door shut, silence fell. The Dagestani mauler dragged McGregor to the canvas and dominated. Conor fought back, landed some shots, but he was outclassed. In the fourth, Khabib locked in the choke. Tap, it was over. But it didn't end there. Khabib leapt into the crowd. A post-fight brawl erupted. UFC chaos at its peak. Both men were suspended. The sport had never seen such madness. McGregor had lost, but the saga was far from over. Public scrutiny mounted. Controversy followed him. Legal issues, assault accusations. Questions swirled about his focus, his hunger, his legacy. But in January 2020, Conor returned. Against Donald Cowboy Cerrone, he made a statement. 40 seconds, a shoulder strike, a head kick, a brutal finish. The King reminded the world why they fell in love with him in the first place. Once again, he had them chanting his name. But the road forward wasn't smooth. Up next was a rematch with Dustin Poirier, a man McGregor had once knocked out. But time had changed both fighters. And this time, Dustin wasn't afraid. At UFC 257, Poirier returned the favor, battering Conor's legs, breaking down his movement, and finishing him with punches. McGregor took the loss with grace, praised Dustin, promised to return stronger, and return he did, for a trilogy bout, the rubber match. But fate intervened once more. In the first round, as Conor stepped back to plant his foot, his ankle snapped, cracked. Just like that, the fight was over. He sat on the mat, shouting at Poirier, vowing revenge, but the reality was brutal. He was out. Again, a broken bone, a broken momentum, and questions louder than ever before. Who was Conor McGregor now? A legend in decline or a warrior reloading? The mystique remained, but time was moving. His name still drew crowds, headlines, heat, but could he still dominate the way he once did? Fans argued, pundits speculated, but those close to him knew one truth. Conor was never out until he said so. He had come back from nothing, from ridicule, from defeat. And behind the million-dollar suits, behind the chaos and cameras, stood the same crumbling kid who once walked off a building site with nothing but a dream and fists full of defiance. There's a reason McGregor isn't just famous, he's unforgettable. His story isn't about clean victories or smooth ascents. It's about war, internal and external. It's about rising from nothing, getting everything, and then daring to chase more. He wasn't made for comfort. He was made for fire. And every time people wrote his name in ashes, he turned it into smoke that filled arenas. The world called him done more than once. But champions don't retire. They reload. And as the lights fade and return, there's always that tension in the air, that maybe, just maybe, McGregor isn't finished yet. Through every win and every loss, he changed the game. The walkouts, the press conferences, the fashion, the money, every fighter chasing bigger checks owes something to him. He proved that an athlete could be more than just a fighter. He could be a mogul, a brand, a myth. He tore down the boundaries between combat sports and entertainment. He didn't just fight opponents, he fought limitations, and often he won. Not every battle, but the war of relevance. When he speaks, the world listens. When he fights, the earth shakes. And even when he falls, people wait for him to rise again. Because that's the truth about Conor McGregor. He doesn't go away quietly, he doesn't fade. He either explodes in victory or combusts in chaos. There is no middle ground. That's what made him magnetic. Fans didn't come just to watch him win. They came to feel the drama, to see if he could summon greatness one more time. And deep down they knew, if anyone could, it was him. Beneath the tattoos and trash talk is a man who obsessed over mastery, who studied every movement, every breath, who knew exactly how far he could push and how far others feared to go. He's a paradox, a warrior poet, a brute and a businessman, arrogant yet vulnerable. He speaks in riddles and lands like a hammer. But the most dangerous thing about Conor isn't his fists, it's his belief, his ability to manifest victory through willpower alone. That's what separates him. When others hope, he expects. When others try, he declares. And while confidence has cost him at times, it's also carved his legend into stone. He never entered a fight with doubt, not because he was naive, but because he had already lived the moment in his mind 1,000 times before the cage door shut. As the years pass and new stars rise, his shadow still looms. His quotes echo through gyms, his clips replay on highlight reels. "We're not here to take part, we're here to take over." A line shouted across continents. Kids now mimic his swagger. Fighters study his blueprint. The featherweight king who stole Aldo's soul in 13 seconds. The double champ who held 2 belts while the world roared. The boxer who went 10 rounds with Mayweather. The enigma who made MMA must-see TV. Win or lose, McGregor's name is etched into the DNA of modern combat sports. He's polarizing, yes, but that's the price of magnitude. To rise that high, you must be willing to fall that far. To speak that loud, you must accept the echo when silence follows. McGregor didn't just walk a tightrope. He sprinted across it with the world watching. Some cheered, some booed, but all watched. Because no matter what you think of him, one truth remains. There will never be another like him. He's not just a product of MMA. He's a force that bent it to his will, then rebuilt it in his own image. The Irishman with the lion's roar. There are moments in sport that transcend the cage, the ring, the game. They become symbols. Aldo falling, Diaz raising his hand, Alvarez crumbling, Khabib choking, then leaping, Mayweather holding his glove in victory. These aren't just fight memories, they're cultural bookmarks, each one starring Conor McGregor. And each one a reminder that history doesn't favor those who play it safe. It belongs to those who dare, even when the odds say, sit down. McGregor stood up again and again, battered, bruised, doubted, but still standing, still staring down destiny like it owes him money. His future is a question mark. Will he fight again? Will he win? Will he return as the lion or fade as the legend? No one knows. And that's the magic. That's why people still tune in. Because every time McGregor steps into the cage, it might be the last, or it might be the greatest. He carries the weight of his own myth, the hunger of his old self, and the pressure of a world that never stops watching. But if his past tells us anything, it's that he never fights small. He never fights safe. He fights like everything is on the line. And maybe that's the lesson buried beneath the belts, the millions, the chaos. That greatness doesn't come from perfection, but from daring to chase it again and again, no matter how many times you fall. McGregor didn't wait for the stars to align. He stormed the sky and stole their fire. He made you believe in the impossible, then dared you to doubt him. And whether you love him or loathe him, you remember him. Because the story of Conor McGregor is still being written. And when he returns, it won't be as a man trying to relive his past, but as a storm reborn. So when the cage lights flicker again, when the world holds its breath and the crowd begins to rise, you'll know he's back. The Irish hurricane, the man who laughed at limits, the notorious one. You may hear the whispers of his downfall, but don't count him out. Not yet, because somewhere behind closed doors, the left hand is still cracking mitts. The war cry is still echoing, and the fire that built an empire is still burning. Because legends don't retire, they hibernate, they wait, they bleed in silence. They listen to the doubts, the mockery, the whispers of a world that moves on too fast. But in the silence, something stirs, a reminder that all kings fall, but the great ones rise again. Conor McGregor isn't just fighting for a belt anymore. He's fighting for something deeper: redemption, legacy, immortality. Because what good is being remembered for what you were when you know deep down you've still got one more storm left to unleash? He's tasted everything: poverty, power, glory, defeat. But glory fades fast. What remains is the fire inside. The same fire that made a teenager walk into a Dublin gym with no clue what grappling was. The same fire that made him stare down champions like they were ghosts in his path. And now, battered but not broken, humbled but never humiliated, he sharpens again. Every missed shot, every broken bone, every scar is now a prophecy, a countdown to one last symphony of violence. And when that moment comes, when he walks again toward the octagon lights, the crowd won't be the only thing roaring. They'll say he changed, that the whiskey and wealth drowned the hunger, that he's too old, too injured, too distracted. But they've said that before. They said it before Diaz, before Mendes, before Aldo, before Alvarez. Every time they closed the book, he rewrote the ending. This time will be no different, because Conor McGregor doesn't fight for money anymore. He's already made history. Now he fights to become something more than a name. He fights to become a myth, the type that echoes for generations in cages, gyms, bars, and battlefields, where the next warrior dares to dream big. And somewhere across the sea, a boy laces his gloves for the first time. He's seen the suits, the knockouts, the chaos. But what he remembers most isn't the fame, it's the fire. It's the moment a wild Irishman showed the world that it's not where you come from. It's how far you're willing to go. That belief, when sharpened with obsession, can cut through anything. That one man, one punch, one moment can change the world. And so the legend lives on, not in the belts, but in the echoes. In every fighter who walks out to the roar of a crowd and dares to believe they can change their fate. In every soul who was told they were too loud, too cocky, too impossible. Because of Conor McGregor, they know it's not impossible, it's inevitable.